Well, welcome to the latest episode of Wild Rivers Podcast. We're going to start into a series, and the series is going to be on fitness and health. And today we're going to start just unpacking a little bit of the why. And I have I guess, a story that sometimes I cringe to tell, but at the same time, I'm excited to share today. And I guess it's kind of my own ups and downs. And David, this is your first time. Thank
Yeah,
you
new
for
face.
being a new victim on the show. And,
I feel like you're going to be the victim today. I have the easy spot.
well, when Marshall and I were talking with you, I think you bring an interesting piece to, you come down and work out with us anyway. So
Yep.
we're like, you know what? You have an interest in social media. You have an interest in just seeing, a lot of things happen, both on a fellowship level, but also just on a camaraderie level of men, really, being intentional in life and growing in their walk with the Lord, growing in their fitness, growing in their families, all those different things. So we're excited to have some of your input as well. So
Thanks.
anyway,
It's a joy to be here.
new victim.
New victim.
Anyway,
Yeah, well, we were just talking about sort of this journey, and especially the stage of life that we're in our mid-30s. But I think it's applicable to really anyone across their lifespan. What are the challenges that you're presented with, and how do you make choices that bring you into the place of health or achievement or succeeding in your goals?
well, it's a unique journey for each one of us. Like, I think it's kind of interesting to look at even the three of us, you, me, and Marshall. We're all within 2 years in age. We're all in a similar season of kids, family, different seasons of work in different ways. But we've all had a different journey, but we all have now a common goal.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting to unpack and hear those different stories. So
Yeah, and I think it'd be great for folks to hear sort of what your story is and why fitness is important to you at this stage of your life, as a dad, a father, a business owner, follower of Jesus, and how you're what you're pursuing and really why. So maybe kind of give us a couple minute synopsis of sort of the last 20 years maybe of kind of hit the high points for, we can kind of dig in a little bit.
Sure. So I guess growing up, I grew up in Southern Oregon. So I grew up just enjoying all the things young guys do, rural, hunting, fishing. Before I could drive, we were riding bikes or hiking or doing whatever to get to everywhere. And I don't think it phased us to step count. What's that?
Yeah, whatever
10
it takes.
miles, whatever, it didn't matter. But then, through high school sports, I played football and basketball, played a tiny bit of baseball. Marshall would be ashamed of my performance in baseball. But anyway.
He's not here to
comment, professional athlete.
You're good.
But I enjoyed athletics in general. I love being, in the gym all the time. So I think post high school, which is a whole nother conversation of, anyway, I became a Christian when I was 16. So there was a major transition in my life in there. But anyway, college. So I was probably worked out on average 5 times a week. I probably played basketball 3 or 4 times a week, played volleyball a couple times a week. And I was intentionally training when I was going to junior college to walk on for my junior and senior year to play football somewhere at some smaller school. So I stayed really diligent in that. And I guess the benefit of being 19 years old at that point was, it was easy. Like I could gain muscle fast. I was quick. I was all those things. I could also eat 10,000 calories a day and it didn't really matter. There's the key part right there.
It didn't matter.
So I'm very grateful that I decided not to play college football because I already have enough aches and pains and injuries and different things from the stuff I've done. I'm glad I didn't add to it with college football. So long story short, by the time I graduated from college, I had shifted gears fully into a career mindset. And initially it was in the construction world, and then it shifted into the real estate brokerage world, which I'm still in today. But from basically 21 years old, I think is when I finished college, to about 26, I had an absolute train wreck of fitness. So I went from, let's go run 5 miles. Okay, cool, no problem. Let's go lift weights, no problem. Let's go play basketball for 4 hours straight, no problem. To I could barely walk up 2 flights of stairs and not be winded.
Yeah.
I went from like 230 pounds to 330 in 5 years. And then there was fast forward to my son being born when I was 28. And then that first few months of parenthood, for those of you who remember back to that first baby.
Some of it's hard to remember.
I don't know how many meals we ate out, but I felt like it was 2 times a day, every day, just because he had some food allergies and different things. And it was the culmination of train wreck.
Yeah.
And that's when I really started to realize, oh my goodness, I got to make some changes. But anyway, long story short, then it took about 5 years to undo 5 years worth of, challenges. And now I'm back down to more or less college weight, not quite college fitness strength wise, but college fitness probably conditioning wise. Yeah. So I guess I did it the hard way. I went from athletic to really unathletic to getting back to athletic.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend that trip, but I think it's a trip that a lot of people, without meaning to, are on.
Yeah.
And I think I'd be happy to share some of the different things, but
I think it's a relatable story. I think a lot of people go on that journey. I know I've had my fair share of ups and downs, but ultimately, you get to a certain point in life. It might not be age determined, but you get to a certain point where you realize, I don't want to feel the way that I'm feeling anymore. I'd like to feel human. I'd like to be able to do the things that I want to do when I want to do them.
Yep.
On-demand fitness, on-demand ability to do the things that life asks me to do.
Well, I think the motivation, I guess let's go back to, so when I was, call it 19 years old, at that peak of kind of fitness, there was no project that I wanted to go do, no fence I needed to build, no construction job that, I could look at, no, load of hay that bothered me.
Yeah.
Like it was just, that was life. Oh, I'm going to sweat a little bit. Didn't even notice it the next day that I'd done something hard, even if it was really hard.
Yeah.
And I think as each year went by and I got further and further away from that, I was still, occasionally doing a remodel on a house or doing the different things, with, a load of hay would roll in, we'd unload it, and I'd be train wrecked, the next couple of days. And I wanted, I think we all want that feeling of being able to not be afraid of whatever project we might have a chance to say yes to. Or then it gets to the point where we're like, okay, I want to be able to keep up with my kids. They're going to get older and stronger and faster and all that. I want to go be able to hike mountains with them. I want to be able to take them hunting. I want to be able to, go play, basketball with them or go do whatever they're interested in doing. I hope they don't get into soccer, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
You'll still love them if they do.
Yeah, and I'll still learn how to go do it with 3 left feet and all that. But anyway.
Yeah.
But I think that was what I experienced as a younger person. And then as that freedom got chipped away, and I know we talk about freedom as being an important part of our lives, whether it's freedom as an American, freedom in Christ, freedom, just to do things that we want to be able to do. All that freedom was stripped away, and I did not like that feeling. And it wasn't enough motivation for me to make those changes because, basically I was working. So before I got married, I was probably working on average 70, 75 hours a week. Like that was kind of a normal work week. I didn't mind it. Like I really, at the time, it probably wasn't obviously it wasn't physically the healthiest thing. Spiritually, it wasn't the healthiest thing, but it wasn't a grind on me. Like I enjoyed the challenge of business, and business grew and business did well. And, then when I got married, I was very intentional in the marriage, like everything pre-marriage, leading up to marriage, so on and so forth, very intentional in that. So then I became really intentional with time, with, trying to spend time with my wife, and then as kids came and so on. And in that, the demands of work and the demands of family, fitness got even further pushed out. And I think we can all probably relate to that as, you're trying to do the right thing, right? I'm trying to do the right thing to provide, to create a successful business, to be there for my family, to go to church, to do the different things. But the reality is there was no time left to squeeze.
Yeah.
Or I didn't think so.
Yeah.
I think that's the key. So then roughly, I guess this would have been December of 2021. So at that point I was roughly 330 pounds. I was still strong. I never struggled with strength. Like I could still probably grab a bench and, throw up 260, 280 pounds.
Yeah.
Strength didn't go away, but I was so cardiovascularly out of shape and so heavy that I didn't enjoy I just didn't enjoy anything physical.
Yeah.
So we were at our business team goal setting meeting, and my mentor was presenting to our business group, and he said, I'll challenge anyone that if there's something they're struggling with in life, you write me a check to someone who you don't like. I will hold it. And if you don't follow through on whatever it is you committed to, I will mail it. And this was presented in the context of if you're not going to make your phone calls, you're not going to follow through on your prospecting
Sure.
or whatever. And we all kind of laughed about it in the moment. We're like, huh. And I couldn't walk away from the conviction that he was talking to me, and it wasn't about business. Because I had
Funny how that happened.
I had failed 3 years in a row, basically. 2 years in a row. I had made little bits of progress to get in better shape, but I'd never actually followed through on the whole package.
Yeah.
So, that's December. I don't remember if it was a week later, 2 days later. I called Dan and I'm like, okay, I think you were talking to me, but you were suggesting like a $500 check when we were in that meeting. I said, that's not enough. He goes, okay, what will be enough? And I said, I'm not sure. He goes, well, how about 5,000? Okay, I probably wouldn't do that. And he says, and how about you make it out to Kate Brown?
For those of you who don't know who Kate Brown is, she was the unduly appointed previous governor of Oregon. She was a real piece of work.
Who during COVID locked us down, did all kinds of different things. And this was 22, right? So we were still dealing with all that.
Yeah.
He says, how about that? And I said, that will work. I can't think of anyone
I
else.
cannot give my money to her.
So I wrote that check. And I committed that from January 1 till July 1, I was going to stick to a written both exercise and diet plan.
Yeah.
And it was super simple. I wrote it in a way that I could actually felt like I could follow through to. So like
Achievable goal.
I could eat one cheat meal a week. I was going to eat keto, which I didn't mind eating. Like I like meats and fats and all that. And I didn't set any crazy parameters around the diet plan. It was just doable,
Yeah.
but consistent.
Yeah.
And then I also wrote out certain holidays and birthdays and different things were cheat days or certain trips. So like it was doable.
Yeah.
And then on the workout side, it was pretty simple. I was going to get out and hike 4 times a month. And I think that was the only real commitment that I had, other than at the end of it, my goal was to hike McLaughlin, which at the beginning of it, there was no way that was going to be doable. And I think the hiking, it had to be like not less than an hour and a half hike.
Yeah.
So it was super simple. Anyway, fast forward to July, and I got to shred that check and hike McLaughlin. We shot that check.
What'd you shoot it with?
There was about 5 of us. It was about all 9mm.
Perfect.
Anyway, that was our church security group. That's a whole nother conversation. Put it on
church
Target
security group.
just to start our training that day.
Did you all hit it?
What's that?
Did you all hit it?
Oh, it got destroyed.
Perfect. Multiple times. Okay.
Anyway.
I'm getting the picture here. There was nothing left of the check.
But what it was 6 months of training myself to actually follow through and learn new habits and new pathways in my mind. All of a sudden, I had a whole different sense of ability and freedom in that. And then there was one other piece to that. I'm going to
Really quick, how much change did you see over those 6 months? Like,
not a crazy amount.
I think I think the modern social media saturated society that we live in is 6 weeks to your dream body, and that's like maybe if you hire a trainer and you're training every single day, a couple hours a day, and you're on the strictest diet and you have no other commitments, that's your full-time job,
Maybe.
So I think it's good for people to hear, like, not a whole lot changed physically.
I lost roughly 30 pounds, but I went from being able to hike maybe 2 or 3 miles up a hill to being able to do 10, 12 miles and a lot, like 4,000 feet of elevation.
You saw some mental clarity, some mental strength shift, and then you also saw your stamina shift.
I also learned a lot more about pushing the limits. If you recall, I just had that irregular heartbeat incident that kind of wrecked my confidence and my psychology. And to get to the point where I could work through that fear and that concern, like I knew the truth. The cardiologist said, this is not going to kill you. It's kind of scary and we'll deal with it. If it gets worse, there's a simple treatment for it.
Yeah.
So I knew mentally that it's not going to kill me, but man, the tricks that my mind tried to play with that were
Yeah.
crazy. But anyway, yeah, in that first 6 months, I think that was in 22. Yeah, I went through, hiked McLaughlin. I went hunting that fall, and hunting was way more fun, way more, ability to get to places and do things and that I just couldn't have done before.
Yeah.
And then the same mentor of mine got into this time we started a competition over the holidays, because the holidays was always the worst time for me. I would gain 15, 20 pounds from Thanksgiving to Christmas every year with all the trays of cookies and everything else. Like it was rough. So we had a competition to lose 20 pounds between November 1 and January 1.
That'll keep you on task.
Yeah, and the loser had to eat, no, if you didn't make it, so both of us were at risk. You didn't make it, you had to eat vegan for the whole month of January.
I think I would just opt to have water only.
So either way, I was going to lose 20 pounds.
Do what you got to do at that point.
But in that, like in the first 2 weeks, I was not making the progress I needed to. I saw the writing on the wall, this was not working. So I'm like, okay, what do I got to do to learn? And I started listening to podcasts, and there was a couple series on Huberman where they had some diet nutritionists and explained counting macros.
Yeah.
And explained, oh my goodness, like I'm eating keto, but there's this other piece to it that I need to be hitting a certain amount of protein, tracking the fat that I'm intaking, tracking the carbohydrates that I'm intaking. I knew about ketosis, but I didn't know about the bigger picture of actual macronutrients. So then I started tracking macros, and wouldn't you know it, I shedded 20 pounds in that period of time.
Your body was getting what it
Granted,
needed.
I was hiking a whole bunch, and I may or might not have used the sauna a whole bunch the day of weigh-in to get that last 2 pounds, but I got it.
Yeah.
But then that
In the grand scheme.
But that built on a whole nother level of the first half of the year confidence of like, hey, I can actually do this. Now it's more intentional and more structured. Okay. So that at that point, now I'd be down 50.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, I still have another 50 I really need to go. And then the first half of 2023 was, I would say, momentum caught up.
Yeah.
Like 1 year of grind, and then momentum was there, and I was starting to work out more consistently, not just hike, but actually work out.
Yeah.
I was starting to, be able to, not just worry about everything I was eating, but naturally I was like, oh, that looks really good. I want to eat that, and it's healthier.
Yeah.
And then over that spring, so I had a commitment from my buddy Mike, and we were going to go to Alaska on a caribou hunt in 2023. But I knew, and knowing him, he was kind of a freak in the woods. Like a Mike mile is 5 miles. He's like, oh, let's just walk over there. It's about a mile away. No, that's 5 miles.
5 miles.
So I knew what I was getting into.
Yeah, you had to scale
and
that.
my motivation to not die in Alaska became good for that year. So I hiked a whole bunch and was working out, got all the way down to basically where I am now, or even a little bit less than I am right now, weight-wise. I wasn't super strong. I was strong in my quads.
Yeah.
That was about the only area. But I went to Alaska, got to do that trip. That was an amazing adventure. God had mercy on me because Mike hurt his back partway through the summer. Sorry, Mike. But it was merciful on me. So
We'll take what we can.
anyway, the first hike in, I carried probably an extra 20 pounds of stuff because he was still gimped up from being on the airplane and everything as we came in. Anyway, it was good. We killed a couple of animals. It was just a great trip. But anyway, that's about the time that it all really clicked to me. Like, this is a lifestyle. That this wasn't a one-time trek to just lose weight and then go back to being lazy and try not to gain weight again.
Yep.
This was a change. I want to not only be in shape physically, from a weight perspective or from ability to hike a mountain perspective, but I want to be fit.
Yeah.
And it started to click. So 2024, now going into 2025, has been a venture of like, okay, how can I become truly fit? And I feel like this is the year that 2025 is going to be the year that I go from average, being at the end of, midpoint of 2023 where I could hike better than most. I was down to a better, body fat percentage, weight, so on and so forth. From there to this year, now the goal is very different. Now the goal is to be able, like we're training for this Murph and being able to do a weighted Murph in, under an hour, and then being able to run a half marathon uphill in June and being able to hike Shasta in July. Like those are three huge things that, are going to be challenging
Yeah.
for me, but like I want to train for it because I know the freedom that comes attached to that. And then I think the other thing in this process, so my wife has been probably the biggest blessing to me in this process because she's fully come alongside
Yeah.
in this. Like I feel really bad for the couples who the wife or the husband individually is on a fitness journey and the other one doesn't care or is a bad influence even.
Right.
Like my wife, has fully come on board about the same time for different reasons. She had some thyroid stuff going on, and it became very evident that eating clean and being in better shape was going to not only be helpful with that, but it was actually the cure
Yeah.
to that.
It's the only,
Yeah.
in most cases. We're
and-
not doctors.
Yeah, exactly. In her situation,
Yeah.
she's now fully in remission with no big pharma
Cool.
intervention or surgery.
Good for her. But you were
so-
united,
We were united in
which
that,
is,
which
that's so
was
huge.
I wouldn't say I guarantee. I am highly suspicious that if we weren't, neither one of us would have followed through on that.
Yeah.
And then even more recently, she's got on board of her own accord to strength training, which
Yeah.
has been a lot of fun. So
That's
now 2 to 3 nights a week, we generally work out at home. Like even no matter what torture we end up still doing today, I'm going to work out tonight with my
Yeah.
wife
Yeah.
again.
Good.
So,
Good for you. Yeah.
it's really good.
Yeah.
So, but
And that speaks to more than just husbands and wives or, that type of relationship. Having people that you work out with. I mean, my wife she's 11 months pregnant at this point. It feels like she's been pregnant for a year. But I started working out with Marshall in October, and just having someone that I know is interested and consistently wanting to get in the gym, even when it's 25 degrees outside and it's 20 degrees in here and everything.
this building is cold.
It's cold.
In the winter.
Working out through the winter with someone has been such an incredible motivation, even if we're just squeaking out one workout a week because we know that that's all we can commit to. The consistency and having someone alongside you sounds like that's been helpful for you.
Well, I think the camaraderie. So I guess to speak to what you're talking about, I've had that with a couple of different. Well, actually, Mike, I went to Alaska with, and Dan, who kind of roped me into that. I've had that brotherhood of linking shields, as I'll call it. But I also see, a couple of my other good friends who, at the same time I did this and made this commitment, they did loosely as well. But it hasn't always seemed like the families were as much on board.
Sure.
And, it would last a short period of time.
Yeah.
And I just, anyway, say that to compliment my wife and also to reiterate that camaraderie piece of both the brotherhood, linking shields, but at home, like both of them. If you don't have one of them or you don't have either of them, it's way harder.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say the evidence speaks for itself. When you get down to it, I would say I dragged my wife into this sort of health arena about, I guess it was 2.5 years ago at this point. It'll be 3 years this summer. And she was excited about it for the sense of feeling better. We had eliminated seed oils and all the crap from every single thing, that's a massive challenge in today's world. They're in everything. So we did that. And, but then at the same time, she was like, but I just want to eat the ice cream at night. And I was like, you feel like crap in the morning when you do, but go for it. Like it's your choice. And I I was so tired of feeling like crap that I just kind of dug my heels in. Now she's even realized like, oh, this is actually super helpful. So I think I wanted to ask you about that. Like as the husband, as the covering for your family, how have you seen your choices impact not only, it sounds like we just heard a little bit about your wife and how that's impacted her, but maybe even your kids. They're watching you. They're seeing, well, this is what health looks like for my parents. And not to throw our parents under the bus, but like, I didn't see that as a kid. I didn't see my parents making good choices, and I didn't know what good choices looked like.
I saw my parents want to make good choices,
Yeah.
but then repeatedly do good and fail, do good and then fail. And then when my parents got divorced, it all kind of blew up. But for me personally, in my own home, like I feel like if the father is going down a path of health, like it exponentially increases the chance that the rest of the family is going to, in some degree or another, follow suit.
Yeah.
I think, well, I mean, there's just a truth that we all want to feel better. There's a truth, and innately, we all know it's good
Yeah.
for us to do, even if everything about our own nature says that we don't want to do it.
Yeah.
We know it's good.
Yeah.
And if all it takes is a little bit of leadership or a little bit of momentum in the home, I believe, to create a huge difference. And then that synergy of doing it together is infectious and just creates kind of a snowball effect. And I'm not saying my wife and I won't take a trip and eat like total garbage, but here's what's happened. Each time we do, we're like, why did we just do
Was
this to
that worth it?
ourselves? Like on our anniversary, like on December 31st, our anniversary, we went to Olive Garden, which I never eat pasta now.
Totally,
Like
Yeah,
never.
same.
We went to Olive Garden, and then we went to a coffee shop and had a couple other things. We're just having a really good time. No kids, just. And then we went to dinner, and I had steak and some potatoes and all this.
Mud pie and
I refused to get in the car when we got out of the restaurant because felt so sick. We walked around Grants Pass and walked around multiple blocks before I would get in the car because I had made myself so sick.
your body gives feedback. It's that evidence. The evidence is undeniable.
Like, I spent money on this. Don't throw up. Second, no, I just don't want to throw up anyway. This is my anniversary. I'm supposed to feel good. This is supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I get it. I get it. And your kids are seeing that, and it's funny. I feel a little bit bad because my kids are 6 and 3, with another one, shortly after. But they say things about food, which I'm thankful that they're conscious of it, because you can't just eat anything these days.
Yeah.
And you have to be aware of what's going into your body, what you're listening to, what you're eating, what you're drinking.
Yeah.
All of it affects your entire existence. So, it's cool to see our kids picking up on things, even if it's just subtly, but you're laying a foundation for them that they can build on as they get older.
There's a little part of me that tries not to let it show too much, but we get together with other families and all the kids are eating.
Yeah.
And my kids have a whole bunch of veggies on their plate and they devour it.
Yeah.
And everybody else has the mac and cheese and whatever else. Not that my kids don't like that too.
Yeah.
But they like all the different kinds of food, and they like good food.
Yeah.
And what's been really cool is watching my wife, as she's making food, whether she's, baking bread, milk, taking the grain mill out and doing the whole process, whether, they take care of the chickens, they help feed the
Hold
cows.
on. You have a grain mill?
Yeah.
That's rad. Maybe we'll talk about that at some point. But that's a dream for a lot of people, to have a grain mill to process your own.
Yeah, so my wife orders einkorn berries.
Yeah.
It's a prehistoric wheat. And then we have, so here was step one, was we bought one of those cast iron hand crank grain mills. That's awesome.
Sure.
But you don't realize how much of a workout that
You got to do
is.
quite a bit.
So very quickly, I think we had it for 2 days set up, and my wife jumped on the phone and called my buddy who's a mechanical mind and said, how can we get a motor for this thing? So now we have a motor for it. But yes, but the kids are watching that. They're taking care of, my kids are 5 and 7 going on 6 and 8. They're taking care of the chickens. They're feeding the cows. They're helping her in the garden. Yeah. They're, Ben has gone hunting with me. He's never gone on a successful hunt because he's still a little bit young for that. But okay. So probably one of my favorite stories. So we do meat chickens in the spring. And for about a month after the first time we did meat chickens, my kids' introduction line to strangers was, have you ever butchered chickens before?
You're like, oh, hold on.
Do you know how to cut their feet off? That was my job. And explaining the whole process. Dad would catch them and kill them, and I would cut their feet off, and then we would throw them. They were just explaining the whole thing.
I love it.
And fortunately, most of the people they were sharing that with were at church, and we have a pretty conservative church and so on. But there was a few people where I'm like, how is this gonna go?
Yeah,
am I gonna get turned in?
Every time my daughter tells stories of me walking out in our field with a knife in my hand, let go of one of our hens. I'm like, well, maybe not to this crowd, but well, we'll see how it goes.
But they understand where food comes from. They understand where, life and death. Like they've seen a lot of different critters die. Some that we liked, some that we knew. That was the reason for their existence. So it's been really good. And I guess it really started. A lot of the health journey started with desire to be fit, but became a holistic. Like, well, if I'm going to be fit, I got to eat good. Well, if I'm going to eat good, I better learn about those things in order to know what I'm actually taking in, and then like. I guess one of the other things as a husband is supporting the desires of my wife's heart.
Yeah.
And her desire is very much in that homesteading realm. Like if she had it her way, we would own a ranch and that's where our income would come from, so on. We don't have the resources to just buy a big enough ranch and not have any debt so we could afford to do that.
Right.
But
someday,
maybe.
You're only 35. There's still a lot of time.
It's possible. I think that's a whole nother conversation about, trusting God about the doors that he's opened and the places he's put you in life.
Yeah.
Like I very much feel like the business side of where the doors that God has opened is where I need to be.
Yeah.
And until that changes, I don't see having enough bandwidth myself to be able to do both. And I see the doors and the platforms that have been open to, connect with different people and have an impact on people's lives or them impact me. In that area, and I just have 100% confidence that at least for this season, that's where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah. I wonder how many people too feel the sense of, we're living in this season of history that's obviously completely uncharted. We have all the modern amenities available to us. We live in a very practical world where it costs money to do everyday things, and it costs quite a bit of money to do those things. But then there's this desire to go back to the way things were in some sense. But that's a massive challenge with resources and time. So I'm sure there's a lot of people feeling the tension of that. So you're saying, how do I stay in this professional lane that God's opened the door for, and also harken back to some of those older
I think some of
traditions?
It's community.
Yeah.
Like, being around people who are, doing the same thing, so you can have that community aspect of doing life alongside the practicality of providing, alongside the practicality of business.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that we desire more of, is developing more community in those things like, homesteading type stuff, or, hey, this day we're going to be doing this project. We got to butcher 100 chickens. Let's get together and do that. And then we'll come over to your place and do 50 at your place or whatever, those kinds of things. Because that's the reality, is if you're going to be professional, you don't have the bandwidth to do all the homesteading, reverting back in history.
Yeah.
Because, it's not. Well, maybe it's possible. Maybe there are some people doing it. It doesn't feel possible to me.
It's pretty much all or nothing at this point. That's what it feels like. You either have to be fully off grid, or you have to be, a toe in both.
Yeah, I just believe that the Lord has made us to be relational people, and we need to do life in community.
Yeah.
So,
anyway. We're also called to be a light in a fallen world. And so, we can't just hole up. As much as sometimes it would feel great to just hunker down.
Yeah, sometimes. I guess, I see what's going on in the world, but then I see the good people that we get to be around, and I'm like, ooh, I would not want to miss out.
I don't want to
on
hunker
that.
down.
So, anyway,
absolutely.
Well, thank you.
This has been a great conversation.
And look forward to hearing more, from you about some of your life experiences.
Lord willing.
You've done. Yes, absolutely.
Thanks for sharing some of your story, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool to hear your journey. I'm sure people will be impacted to hear some of what you've gone through. And
I feel like it's a super relatable thing, coming out of college or coming out of high school and watching your fitness and health disintegrate, whether it's career, family, so on and so forth, commitments, or just riding the coattails of being athletic. And sometimes you can get away with that for a really long time. I know guys who are still getting away with that in their late 30s and 40s just because they were really good athletes, but there's no intentionality behind it.
Yep.
So,
anyway. Well, cheers to you.
Yeah.
And
cheers to consistency in the small things.
Exactly.
Thank
and
you.
freedom.